Tonight, the new clashes on the streets of Minneapolis over the ICE shooting and now the legal battle over how to handle the investigation, with some prosecutors resigning in protest. The violent confrontations not letting up. A demonstrator shoving an officer, a cloud of tear gas choking protesters. Plus, we'll tell you why a group of prosecutors inside the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office just resigned. Also tonight, in contempt, House Republicans pushing to hold the Clintons in criminal contempt of Congress after refusing to testify in the Epstein inquiry, and President Trump's profane reaction when he was heckled about Epstein late today. West Wing actor Timothy Busfield surrendering to police as he faces child sex abuse charges. What he told cameras as he turned himself in. The growing death toll in Iran. And now President Trump is encouraging protesters to stand up and fight. Troubling new allegations against the ex-husband accused of killing an Ohio couple, the family breaking their silence tonight. Officer ambushed, new video of a man firing explosive rounds at a police officer, how he survived that attack. Dramatic rescue, a man rushing in to save toddlers who had wandered into traffic. Where were their parents? And there's good news tonight, what a group of high schoolers surprised their teacher with that brought him to tears. And the second surprise no one saw coming. Nightly News starts right now.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Yamas.
And good evening. We begin tonight with tensions boiling over in Minnesota. Violent battles between protesters and federal officers unfolding in the streets, and internal backlash brewing inside the Justice Department. In the Twin Cities, scenes just like these, federal agents clashing with protesters after last week's killing of Renee Good in a violent encounter with an ICE officer. Some ICE and Border Patrol agents unleashing painful bursts of pepper spray and tear gas on the crowds. You see it right here. Inside the Justice Department, a revolt. At least 3 federal prosecutors resigning over concerns about the direction of the DOJ's probe into last week's shooting. And President Trump now pulling a lifeline that allowed many Somalis there to stay in the country. Shaq Brewster is following this story for us from St. Paul tonight.
Tonight, new clashes between anti-ICE demonstrators and federal law enforcement in Minneapolis. Here, a protester shoves an officer who detains him. Officers appearing to use tear gas and pepper spray. Today, we met Sarah Lechner. This is your neighborhood?
Yeah, I got pepper spray all over me. It's the first time I've had pepper spray. I couldn't see to walk home hardly.
DHS argues protesters have been impeding law enforcement.
I think that there's quite a degree of Trump derangement syndrome here. There's ICE hysteria that we're seeing here.
All happening less than 2 blocks from where Renee Good was shot and killed by an ICE officer. Tonight, there's an FBI investigation into the incident, but at least 3 prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota have resigned over their concerns with the direction of the investigation, a source familiar with the resignations told NBC News. And a federal law enforcement source tells NBC News those resignations were triggered in part by Justice Department leadership pressure to investigate Good and her widow's connections to activist groups.
Renee and Rebecca's really good people.
The father of Good's late husband tonight speaking to NBC's Kathy Park.
I mean, I've seen the video. The car did hit him. I mean, you know, there's just so many things we could say. Could he not shot her? It's just sad.
The Trump administration also revoking temporary protected status for Somalis in the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem posting temporary means temporary. We are putting Americans first. State Senator Zainab Mohammed says her community feels targeted.
What does this announcement mean for those families?
It means that those families are going to be ripped apart. You have people who've been here for 30 years.
And with that, Shaq joins us outside ICE headquarters in St. Paul. Shaq, those demonstrators out there again tonight and also planning something else in the days ahead?
That's exactly right, Tom. It's a sign that the protests that you're seeing here behind me are going to continue for the days and weeks to come. They're planning an economic blackout, meaning no school, no work, all in protest of the stepped-up immigration enforcement. Tom?
Shaq Brewster for us. Shaq, thank you. Bill and Hillary Clinton are facing possible contempt of Congress charges tonight after they refused to testify as part of the House Oversight Committee's investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Ryan Nobles reports from Capitol Hill.
Tonight, former President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, are facing the prospect of being held in contempt of Congress. This after failing to appear for a closed-door deposition as part of the House Oversight Committee's investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
I think it's very disappointing as a result of Bill Clinton not showing up for his lawful subpoena.
The Clintons informed the committee they had nothing material to offer the investigation. And in a letter to Chairman James Comer, they argued his subpoenas were legally invalid, writing, "Every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and are ready to fight for this country, its principles, and its people, no matter the consequences. For us, now is that time." The former president has long denied any wrongdoing, but Republicans point out that Clinton has repeatedly appeared in photos and documents connected to Epstein, arguing he has information to provide.
No one's accusing Bill Clinton of any wrongdoing. We just have questions.
Most Democrats we spoke to today either avoided the question or defended the Clintons' decision to skip the deposition. But Democrat Ro Khanna, who wrote the law to force the DOJ to release all the files, had a different take. Do you think the president should have appeared?
He should appear. I have always said that this needs to be transparent. Everyone involved should be providing an explanation. And I have conducted this in a way that doesn't single out Republicans or Democrats.
The search for Hollywood actor Timothy Busfield ended in New Mexico today. The star of The West Wing and 30-something surrendering to police over child sex abuse allegations. Chloe Malas has the latest.
Tonight, Hollywood star Timothy Busfield ending a days-long search by law enforcement by turning himself in to New Mexico police. The actor now charged with sexual contact of a minor and child abuse. Busfield speaking to TMZ as he surrendered to authorities.
I'm going to confront these lies. They're horrible. They're all lies. And I did not do anything to those little boys. And I'm going to fight it.
The actor was a staple of primetime television for decades.
What are you working on?
Best known for his roles in The West Wing and 30-something, and movies like Field of Dreams.
When did these ball players get here?
According to court documents obtained by NBC News, the alleged abuse happened on the set of the Fox series The Cleaning Lady, in which Busfield directed and acted. Brothers featured in the show told their therapist when they were 11 years old about inappropriate contact from Busfield on set, who they referred to as Uncle Tim, and that it began when they were 7 years old, according to the affidavit. One of the boys alleged Busfield touched both his genitalia and bottom. The affidavit alleges that the behavior went on for almost 2 years. When asked by investigators if he ever had any physical contact with the boys and if he ever picked them up and tickled them, Busfield said it was, quote, highly likely that he would have, later saying, quote, I don't remember overtly tickling the boys ever, but it wouldn't be too uncommon for me. Tonight, Busfield's lawyer saying his client did not do anything wrong and denied his client was on the run, telling NBC News, quote, he was across the country and had to travel by car to New Mexico, adding he wants to turn himself in because he wants to clear his name and reputation. Busfield's wife, actress Melissa Gilbert, known for her role in Little House on the Prairie, deactivated her social media after the accusations came to light, telling NBC News she stands with and supports her husband.
Chloe Malas joins us now live. And Chloe, tonight Busfield remains behind bars?
That's right. Tomorrow, Busfield is expected to appear before a judge who's going to make the decision, Tom, as to whether to keep him in custody or release him.
All right, Chloe, we thank you for that. Tonight, President Trump is encouraging anti-government protesters in Iran to take to the streets and promising them that help is on the way. Richard Engel has the latest.
Iran's crackdown is far deadlier than previously reported. A human rights group today upping the confirmed toll from around 600 to more than 2,500. And now President Trump is promising help is coming.
Keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers. His help is on its way.
But not everyone in the Middle East is keen for a quick regime change in Iran. Multiple U.S. and Middle East officials telling NBC News Israel and some Arab states are encouraging President Trump to hold back on any large-scale strikes, at least until the Iranian government is weaker. One Arab official saying there is a lack of enthusiasm from the neighborhood for American military action in Iran right now. But if President Trump does pump the brakes, it could be fatal for the demonstrators, who are now being rounded up in the thousands, and around 100 forced to make televised confessions to crimes that could be punishable by death.
People are arbitrarily detained, and then suddenly they're appearing on state television after being coerced into a confession under oftentimes physical or psychological torture.
Activists say the security forces are also going house to house, hunting for the satellite communication devices the protesters are using to smuggle out pictures, and even cutting phone lines, so the repression goes unseen and unheard. Tom?
Richard, thank you. President Trump also hitting the road today, touting progress on the economy while visiting a Ford factory in Michigan, but also facing new backlash over the Justice Department's criminal inquiry of the Fed chair. Here's Gabe Gutierrez.
Tonight, President Trump hitting the road.
They're building more plants in the United States because of tariffs.
Touring a plant that makes F-150 trucks with Ford executives in Michigan.
That's what these policies are doing for Ford. We're going to actually expand one of our existing plants.
The trip comes as the president faces growing bipartisan backlash over the Justice Department's criminal inquiry into Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Hopefully he'll be out of there soon.
Tied to his Senate testimony last summer about cost overruns on the Fed's multi-billion-dollar renovation of its D.C. headquarters, which does not draw on taxpayer dollars. Powell says it's retribution for not doing what the president wants. And amid the inquiry, Trump tonight renewing his pressure on Powell to lower interest rates.
He's undermining the faith and credit of the United States of America.
Something like this is not helpful to either the economy or trying to keep the temperature down politically.
Meanwhile, the president pointing to new numbers showing inflation steady at 2.7%. Overall grocery prices up 0.7% since last month. Beef prices up 1%. Eggs, though, have dropped 8%. Gas prices at a 4-year low. The president touting progress, even as recent polls show many Americans skeptical of his handling of the economy.
The results are in, and the Trump economic boom is officially begun.
The president also calling an unlikely potential ally, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, as he explores capping credit card interest rates at 10%. Tom?
Gabe Gutierrez at the White House. The Supreme Court today hearing a pair of landmark cases that could allow states to ban transgender students from playing in girls' sports. Laura Jarrett was following the arguments, and Laura, this decision is obviously going to have a major impact.
Tom, this is one of the biggest cases of the term. The justices now confronting a question they haven't actually answered before on state laws in West Virginia and Idaho that require participation on sports teams to be based on a student's biological sex at birth. That's something that the states argue is needed to make sure that girls aren't being disadvantaged. And the questions from the court today on the conservative side suggesting they are simply unwilling to say that these sports bans now found in more than half of states nationwide violate the Constitution's promise for equal treatment, emphasizing that federal law allows separate sports teams for boys and girls, and that this is an issue best left to the political process, Tom.
All right, Laura, we thank you for that. We have some new dramatic video we want to show you tonight, released by authorities in South Carolina. It shows what's being described as an ambush attack against a police officer who was sitting in his patrol car. George Solis has the video and the story.
The explosive moment caught on camera. This surveillance video released by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, showing a car slowly creeping through a parking lot at the Greenville County Law Enforcement Center around 1 a.m. Sunday night. And then suddenly, shots are fired.
An ambush-style attack against a Greenville City officer.
According to investigators, the firework-like effect you see in this surveillance video coming from incendiary rounds meant to inflict maximum damage, the bullets containing a chemical mixture designed to spark a fire when hitting hard surfaces. Photos released by SLED showing the bullet holes and singed door of the officer's car. The suspect, later identified as 42-year-old David Lane, then led police on a chase, according to SLED. After an exchange of gunfire and a car crash, Lane found dead in his vehicle. A coroner's report saying the cause of death has been determined to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Tonight, the investigation into the shooting continues. Authorities say the wounded officer is okay and was released from the hospital. George Solis, NBC News.
And when we return in 60 seconds, the arrest in the case of the brutal slaying of an Ohio couple. Now their family is breaking their silence for the first time. That interview next. We are back now with the family of that murdered Ohio couple, speaking out for the first time since the wife's ex-husband was charged with their murders, and telling our Aaron McLaughlin new details about their previous marriage.
Tonight, Spencer and Monique Teppe's brother-in-law tells NBC News when the family first learned the couple had been murdered, only one possible suspect came to mind: Monique's ex-husband, Michael McKee.
She was terrified because he had threatened her life on multiple occasions when they were married.
Rob Misla sharing with NBC News what he says Monique Teppe told him about her brief and troubled marriage to McKee. His account backed up by a second family member.
So she wasn't shy about talking to people about traumatic experiences that she had with her ex and just how emotionally abusive he was to her. It affected her to this day.
The vascular surgeon is now charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder. Officials allege he shot and killed the Teppes in their Columbus, Ohio home. Misla says Monique and McKee abruptly divorced in 2017 after less than 2 years of marriage because Monique was so worried. Court documents cite incompatibility. Misla says he's unaware of whether he had made any recent threats.
Do you know if the abuse was ever physical?
I don't.
A public defender representing McKee says he intends to plead not guilty.
If any of us had known that these threats were actually grounded in possibility, we all would have acted differently.
Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Rockford, Illinois.
Welcome back. It has already been a brutal winter for NFL coaches, and now Mike Tomlin has stepped down after the Steelers lost to the Texans last night. Tomlin was once the youngest coach to win a Super Bowl and spent 19 winning seasons in Pittsburgh. He joins a growing roster of NFL coaches, you see them here, already starting to interview for next season. And a Florida man is being praised for this daring highway rescue, all caught on camera. The Good Samaritan, you see him there, was driving home when he noticed 2 little girls wandering right on the street in the middle of oncoming traffic. You can see here the toddlers are crossing into the center lane of the highway before he races and scoops them up. The man told our affiliate the children's parents were staying at a house nearby and were apparently unaware they had gotten out. Okay, when we come back, if the shoe fits, the teacher known for his signature footwear and his students who stunned him with a gift he'll never forget. That video and the good news next. Finally, there's good news tonight. A high school class brought their teacher to tears with a small but thoughtful gift. That moment went viral. You're about to see it. But there was one more surprise no one saw coming.
At Providence High School in Charlotte, North Carolina, Jeff Swicegood teaches his senior English class about Shakespeare.
What then? Why then 'tis there is my...
But even the bard can't compete with the dramatic surprise this group of students had in store for their beloved substitute teacher. A brand new pair of Vans, the shoes he wears every day.
Thank you. It just means a lot that people think of me.
I just do what I love and love what I do, and they're the reason why I come every day.
Kalia Shack filmed the now viral video.
I think it touched so many people because a lot of people can resonate with the fact that they've had a teacher that has impacted them.
The video even catching the attention of Vans.
It's amazing what you guys did.
The company launching its own surprise, gifting the group of 12th graders a shopping spree, including a gift card for their very own pair of sneakers.
And I are getting the matching red ones. Yes!
Reminding us all that celebrating each other always makes you feel head of the class.
We love you, Miss Yay!
Nice kicks there all around. All right, that's Nightly News for this Tuesday. I'm Tom Yamas. Thanks so much for watching. Tonight and always, we're here for you. Good night. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.